No one likes a mad woman. You made her like that, and you poke that.
Good afternoon from Mickey and from me from Castle Goring. Mickey says she's not going to stay for long because she has decided when I am speaking to you guys, she likes to sit right there on the other side of the chaise longue. She doesn't mind greeting you, but then she says she's not going to be bothered to sit with her Motty because she is going to chill just a little bit out of view. So now that Mickey has gone, today hopefully we will be able to have some fun, because it really is rather funny when, shall we say, professional thieves break into an establishment and it turns out everything's fake. Well, there's a version of that we can have entertainment with today. So, but before getting into all of that, I will start with PJUK, hairy chest, muscular man. Woohoo! Some of these noms de plume are just so incredible. Great channel, thank you, thank you. I cannot remember the last time the Queen cancelled attending a major event under her doctor's orders. I thought she looked a bit yellow in the face at the recent reception for business leaders, at Windsor Castle. Do you have any insights into her prognosis? Surely on the mind of many is the Queen okay? Or is there a more serious health diagnosis now emerging? Or something important, albeit private, being hushed up at the palace? And Anita DeCosta says, do you have any behind-the-scenes knowledge as to the true state of the Queen's health? Should we be worried? I'll answer those two questions together because they are but two of many. And obviously people are really concerned about the Queen's health because the Queen is 95 and she is our beloved sovereign, having earned our regard. She didn't get it without earning it. It's just desserts. I know what's wrong with her. Or I know what was wrong with her. Let me put it this way. I'm going to dance around the issue, if you don't mind. I will indicate as opposed to state, because everybody is entitled to the seventh veil, and it's very mundane and almost embarrassing. So mundane is it. It is not a serious health problem, but it is extremely uncomfortable. The Queen, as one of the former courtiers said to me the other night, she stays up and looking at too much television and eating junk food. Well, listen, she's 95, and if she wants to enjoy herself, why not? However, there is a price to pay, and she has been paying the price because her eating habits have not been conducive to the, shall we say, elementary function of any human body that, you know, if you sort of relax a little bit too much in terms of your diet and your, it's not that she's eating unhealthily so much as that she eats junk food at times. Well, so do I've got to tell you. But I think a part of the problem is tied in with her personality, because the Queen is not somebody who's out there and, you know, she's not a person who's into display, and she keeps things within herself. It's a part of her personality, and I think it's a very commendable part of her personality, because she's not there, you know, just making an exhibition of herself, but there is a price to pay for that character trait, let's put it that way. Because if you have a lot going on, and she has a very busy schedule, she has a whole heap of problems with the Prince Andrew business, which is less problematic than Harry and Meghan. She's still grieving for Prince Philip. She's trying to enjoy her life and succeeding, it's got to be said. Maybe rather too well. But Diana used to go to the Hale Clinic. The Queen can't go to the Hale Clinic, so she needed to go to the hospital. So more than that, I'm not prepared to say. Those of you who are adept at reading between the lines, please feel free to do so. The rest of you, let me just say, it's nothing serious, but it is uncomfortable unless the problem is solved. A question says, why is Harry making the Queen's health all about him and his despair, when he's done everything in his power to pile the pressure on her and make her life a misery? Question? It's a very good question. But of course Harry's going to make it all about him. Harry and Meghan are all about themselves, you know. Spoiled, self-centered, middle-aged brats are like 2-year-olds, except they're no longer this high from the sofa or this high. They're touching the ceiling. Well, not quite in this room, but still, you get the picture. Yes, he has piled the pressure on the Queen, and he has helped to make this year a very discomforting year for her, in a totally uncalled for way. That's not love. That's selfishness. Why is it all about him? Because he's selfish. He's suffering greatly. It's like, do you remember when Meghan's Uncle Mike died? You know, the uncle who got her the internship in Buenos Aires and wasn't important enough to ask to the wedding, even though he was really surprised he wasn't asked. And then when he died, Meg's baby was broken into pieces with grief. Mickey, can you believe it? Megxie was so completely grief-stricken. Oh, Megxie was just grief-stricken. She was just... And it's a wonder she didn't have to go into the psychiatric hospital to recover. It is a wonder, yes. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. It's a wonder that she didn't need treatment. Of course, He wasn't important enough to be asked to the wedding. He wasn't important enough to receive birthday or Christmas greetings, much less presents. He certainly wasn't important enough for her to go to his funeral. But he was very important when she could use him as a source of grief. Well, Harry's also showing us how wonderful he is, because Harry's letting everybody know that he's cut up to bits because of the Queen. And he's so distressed and upset on account of the Queen. Let's see how genuine he is. Is he going to turn over a new leaf, or are we going to have more of the same? That will be the acid test. He says, no, sorry, he says, Lady C, how did Meghan's letter get into the public domain and get all this attention? I write to my congressmen and senators all the time. My letter is never shared with the public. Well, I think maybe it's because you haven't revealed the contents of your letter to the press the way Meghan has done, because you can bank on it. Pelosi and Schumer didn't reveal the contents of the letter. Meghan and her PR people did. But wasn't it a glorious miscalculation? There was Meghan thinking, oh, I'm so clever. Meghan was thinking she's just so clever that she's going to have a reputation of the ivory ad. Remember the ad that she wrote the letter, and they pulled that ad immediately. When she was 11 years old, she wrote that letter, and Procter and Gamble acted on it, and gosh, she's so potent and powerful. And she calculated so brilliantly. The whole thing is all but passed. It's all but agreed. And what's going to happen? She's going to be able to, in 6 months, claim credit for having ensured that all women in America get, shall we say, enforced maternity paid leave. And now they've dropped that part of it. It's so cruel. Mickey, what's Mutty going to do? Mutty's heartbroken on behalf of Meg Ziadeh. Heartbroken. I'm so empathetic. I'm just so empathetic. My heart breaks for Meg Ziadeh. There she was going to be able to catch yet another credit that she didn't deserve. And what's going to happen now? Those nasty people have suspended the sure thing. Gosh, it's like fixing a race, and all of a sudden, just as the horse is coming up to the finishing line, a rat runs across the racetrack, spooks the horse, and it bolts over the track into the field. My goodness, you're talking about bad-lucked or miscalculated, but certainly devious and manipulative. Scotties for life says, oh, I see you're a dog lover too. Great. Looks like Meghan's letter to the US Congress is going down in flames. As of this moment, what she was lobbying for was taken out of the Biden bill under consideration. Karma? Well, karma is not something I'm 100% in agreement with, I have to tell you. I do wish it existed as frequently as people hope it does, but I don't think it does. I've seen good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people. In this instance, I wouldn't have said it was karma so much as a gross miscalculation. There she was thinking, It's a done deal. It's in the bag. She's going to be able to jump on that bandwagon, hobby horse it to death, and we would have never heard the end of how all American women on maternity leave should be grateful to Meghan, just because Meghan, who's always been a feminist starting at the age of 11 when she challenged Procter and Gamble, notwithstanding the fact, of course, that it was a class assignment and everybody else in the class also had to challenge Procter and Gamble. I just make that point for what it's worth. Miscalculation, as I said before. Miscalculation. But isn't it fun? Isn't it glorious? I just love when people make complete asses of themselves because they are so fake and phony and so opportunistic that they jump on the bandwagon just as the horse lurches off and pow, they fall flat on their faces. Oh, it's so false. I just love it. Yvonne Hancock says, do you think Harry was disappointed when he went to the Big Apple for his tour that not many people showed up? Deep down, do you think he was disappointed by the outcome, the turnout of support for them? He's probably not used to not having lots of people. Do you think this was a shock due to the lack of people? What do you think? My understanding, and I could have received inaccurate information, but I don't think I did, is that they were exultant. They thought that the visit had gone brilliantly in terms of them laying down their marker, and they weren't concerned with the fact that there weren't crowds. They didn't expect crowds. New York, you don't get crowds for something like that. And they would not have expected crowds. And also, let's remember Harry has displayed his contempt for crowds, as even crowds that were sympathetic towards him and his brother William at the time of their mother's death. Let's remember that. Harry is on record as snaring and being contemptuous of people who were very upset that his mother had died because they didn't know her. And really, how dare they be upset when he's the only one, and maybe William as well, who should have been upset. That really is the message of what he said. The crowds were never going to be the issue. The issue was what would be the reaction in terms of the press. And although there has been adverse reactions worldwide, as far as Harry and Meghan were concerned, as long as Vanity Fair and People magazine and all of those pulp fiction products were going to be pulping out the fiction, or pumping out, I should say, the fiction, they were perfectly happy. It's when the worm turned, and like the Wall Street Journal said, excuse me, not to mention the British press, the Australian press, the Canadian press, and many segments of the American press. That's when they really got very, very annoyed that they weren't getting their due, and they yet haven't been able to figure out that the reason why they're not getting what they regard as their due is because we see that they're getting their due. They just simply don't see it. We are giving them their just desserts. We're not buying the lie. We're not buying the fantasy. We're not buying the, oh, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are so great and grand. They're going on a state visit to New York from their house in Montecito. Goodness, how they have not only arrived, they have arriven. He wasn't shocked by the lack of people. He never expected there to be a lot of people. But he did expect that the content of the cameras would provide him with what they wanted. Hasn't happened. Poor baby. Poor baby. Mickey, today Marty is just so grief-stricken on behalf of Harry and Meghan. Everything seems to be going wrong for them. I don't know why they just don't try sincerity, and maybe that would work. Don't you think? I think so. Emmy says, Lady C, I'm wondering if you could somehow limit comments to helpful suggestions and of info pertaining to your topics. I can only imagine the effort it takes to plough through all of the comments each day and wonder if it is even possible. It is possible. It's time consuming, but it's possible. If you can't be thorough in life, don't expect to get the desired results. The devil is always in the detail. So if I may stop interrupting myself and continue, I only ask because pertinent ideas, suggestions and info may be falling through the cracks. While I agree you and Mickey are gorgeous, you hear that, Mickey? We're gorgeous. Come on, come and show everybody your face. Come on. Mickey says, I'm not moving, Mummy, I'm chilling. Let's keep the conversation moving and on topic. I like to read comments, and many of the ones on your vlog are juicy, but honestly, there is a lot of fluff as well. Since I work for a living and can only watch your vlog at night, here is comment number 1100, which you will likely never read. Sorry, but you are wrong. Isn't it wonderful? I read them. I read a story from Reuters which stated that an internet agency found that there were 4 Twitter accounts that are responsible for perpetrating all of the MEG hate on the internet and were summarily taken down. Clearly, this research agency doesn't read the news or have critical thinking capabilities to know the main perpetrator of the MEG drama is she herself. No doubt this agency is an arm of the Sussex PR firms, and thus it is disturbing to see what length these entities will go to control the narrative. And do I agree? Yes, I do. Comment number 1100 from ME. I agree. There is little doubt in my mind that nobody marshals the troops except the Sussexes. Nobody cares enough to marshal the troops against the Sussexes. They aren't important enough. Certainly the royal family isn't doing it, nor are the courtiers, nor is the press. The British press is sitting on a titanic load of stuff about Meghan that would sink not only her ship, but would displace water in half the ocean if they floated it. The only people that it would suit to have this campaign, shall we say, would be Meghan and Harry and their PR people. You know, there's a reason why paranoia doesn't only have the characteristic of overweening and exaggerated and excessive self-importance to a level of grandiosity that is psychotic, but that they also goes along with self-importance. They always, because they're so important, they have enemies, because anybody who resists them is an enemy. Anybody who doesn't see how wonderful and marvellous and phantasmagoric they are is cheating them of their just deserts. Of course they're going to have a narrative that people are against them because it feeds their narrative. Remember, Meghan and Harry were busy playing the race card from the very first time that they were linked. They played the race card to bury a lot that the press knew about her, and they succeeded in doing it. Since then, they have been ferreting out victimhood the way a rat ferrets out cheese in a larder. I hope I've made the point. And yes, I think your observation was one not only that I agree with, but that I have actual knowledge of personally, that they don't only go after people who they don't like, but some of those very people then turn the guns, making sure they miss the target, but creating all sorts of fluff. I choose your word. I steal your word. AK says, I seem to remember Catherine was asked the same thing if she's a princess by a child. This, of course, alludes to one of the school children asking Meghan if she was a princess, and Meghan, of course, said, yeah, sure. And, of course, she was actually accurate, because she is a princess. She is Her Royal Highness Princess Henry, Duchess of Suffolk. Sorry, not Suffolk. Sorry, that there's no Duchess of Suffolk. It's Duchess of Sussex. It's the Countess of Suffolk. Sorry. Wrong title. Duchess of Sussex, Countess of Dumbarton, you know. She was perfectly happy to use sex, but she couldn't use dumb. Oh dear, doesn't that tell you something? And Baroness, which would always be called Lady Colin. So yes, she is a princess, but the title is Duchess of Sussex. So I will continue the question. I seem to remember Catherine was asked the same thing if she's a princess by a child, but her reply was, I'm not. I'm the Duchess of Cambridge, but lots of people call me Catherine. She then told some little girl that it is she who looks like a princess in her lovely pink coat. Same question, two completely different reactions. The differences are stark. What do I think of the differences? Day and night, good and bad, constructive and destructive, elegant and inelegant, ladylike and flotsam and jetsam. I think the contrast couldn't be greater. But Meghan is very self-important. She always has been very self-important. Success has not only gone to her head, it's swollen it. The body is like a stick insect. That's not a good recipe for wearing clothes or for photographing well. You photograph tall if your head is small. You photograph short and you look short the bigger your head is in proportion to your body. So she already had a huge head, and the importance went rushing up to it and has displaced all sense of proportion ever since she got her clothes into Harry. And it has to be said, he's the most willing victim I've ever seen. At which point, as I have said before, and I'll repeat it, the act that had worked for her and got her to where she was aiming to get to by being nice and kind and cooperative, she just jettisoned it. And she kept on with the declarations of greatness. And I'm a great humanitarian. I care very deeply as long as I don't have to engage my heart, and preferably not interact with you either, because remember, we're very important. So when you see us in public, you're not allowed to talk to us. Remember how when they were at Windsor, they gave instructions that nobody was to speak to them, nobody was to interact with them, nobody was even to pet their dogs. That, I can tell you, is so antithetical to what royal, aristocratic and country life are all about, that if you wrote it in a book and said that royalty behaved like that, a critic would have to be dumb or crazy to find it believable, except of course where Harry and Meghan are concerned. Michael Janks says, "Hi Lady C. Firstly, thank you so much for your channel and incredible knowledge regarding the royal family. I'm a huge fan. Thank you. My question is it true that Her Majesty has the authority to elect a King or Queen of Canada? And if so, would Murch and Perch, prior to them abdicating, have had an opportunity to have taken such a position? No. Canada is a dominion, and the head of state of Canada is the same head of state as the head of state of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. What the Queen has the ability to do is appoint a Governor General. There have been a series of Canadian Governors General who were attached to, related to, or a part of the royal family. The first was the Marquis of Lorne, who became the 9th Duke of Argyll and who was married to Queen Victoria's daughter, Princess Louise. The last royal, if I recall correctly, and I could be wrong, but I think the last royal Governor General of Canada was the former Prince Alexander of Teck, who was the first Earl of Athlone, Queen Mary's brother, and the husband of Queen Victoria's granddaughter, Princess Alice of Albany. if I remember correctly, and I could be wrong, Mackenzie, who was a famous Canadian politician, said they didn't want any more royal governors general. They wanted homegrown governors general. And they got them. I could be wrong about the last royal governor general, but I think I'm not. There was never any prospect of Harry and Meghan being Governor General and the Governor General's consort of Canada. For a very short while, it was mooted for Australia, but not seriously at the palace, because the palace already knew that they were dealing with mavericks and wild cards, and that Harry and Meghan could not be trusted. But they were hoping that they would turn around and turn out to be more cooperative and more trustworthy. Well, as we have seen, they turned out to be less cooperative and less trustworthy than even their fiercest critics at the palace could possibly have imagined they would be. But so no, the Queen cannot appoint a King or Queen of Canada. That would be up to the Canadians. But she can certainly appoint the monarch's representative, which is the Governor General, and she does appoint her representative. But they are homegrown and have been since the 1960s, if I am not mistaken, or maybe it's the 1950s. Katie Cameron Sage says, Lady C loved the gold outfit. Do you think you can discuss whether or not William and Catherine will succeed to the throne when the Queen eventually passes, versus Prince Charles and Camilla? By the way, getting the Mary Shelley book for the holidays. I'm delighted to hear that you're getting it. It's an absolutely wonderful book. I'll tell you, Mary Shelley came alive to me in a way that she had never been before, even though I'd read various books about her. Wendy Bardsley is a wonderful writer. She knows her subject and she brings her to life in the most wonderful way. So you actually, even though it's fictive, it's based on fact. So it's almost faction as opposed to fiction. And wonderful book. So I think you will enjoy it. Do you think that there are any ghosts in the castle from the time of Mary Shelley? Okay, so that's a two-part question. Shall we take William and Catherine first, since that was asked first? There is no mechanism for William acceding to the throne upon the Queen's death as long as Prince Charles is alive and has not relinquished his rights of succession. And why would he? He's been a wonderful Prince of Wales. He's dedicated his whole life to the crown and to the British people and the people of the Commonwealth and indeed the people of the world, because he cares about the world. I don't agree with everything he says and does, but I can see he's a really good man and an earnest man who tries to do the right thing. Nobody's perfect. Nobody always does the right thing. You can't agree with everything somebody does. And I really think he will make a very good king, but he's not going to be king for very long. I would be really surprised if he's king for 30 or 40 years. I would be super surprised. But he might be king for 15 or 20 years, by which time William will be nice and mature. But William is already a mature person, and William is very much a monarch cut from the same cloth and in the same mould as his grandmother, rather more so than Charles. Charles has elements of his father and his father's rebelliousness, and his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother's mischievousness. He's not mischievous, but her mischievousness was manifested in ways that encouraged him to take independent lines that sometimes it might have been better to not take, and maybe to shut his mouth more. William, you notice, is like his grandmother. He doesn't shoot off his mouth the way Charles sometimes does. But no, I don't see any leapfrogging. Mary Shelley. Well, we have Ghostbusters who come here and they're very satisfied. People say, have I ever seen a ghost? No, I haven't. And have I ever thought there was a ghost or disturbed by ghosts? No, I haven't. Mickey often barks in the family drawing room, and friends of mine who come here regularly say, Mickey's barking at Mary Shelley's ghost. Well, I say Mickey is barking at birds and owls and planes, because Mickey barks when a plane flies over. So, and Mickey sees things that we can't see and hears things that we can't hear. But I don't think they're necessarily ghostly. However, the Ghostbusters who come and have their ghost-busting sessions, they're always very pleased. So what can I tell you? If it's haunted, they're very benevolent ghosts. And if it's not haunted, that's fine too. There's plenty of room in this universe for all of us, past, present, and future. That's my view. Charlie Smith says, when Thomas won the lottery, did he ever apportion any percentage of it as a gift to his other offspring from a previous marriage to set them up a little in life? We never hear about that, do we? That's a big question nobody asks anyone. Yes, he definitely did. He gave both Samantha and Thomas Jr. money. He also gave Meghan money. It's in my book, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, I'm forgetting exactly what is and what isn't in the book, but I'm pretty sure it's in my book. He has always been a very generous man and a generous father. He was extremely generous to the school. He gave a lot of time, and he did not only with Meghan, but otherwise theatrical productions. And remember, he was a top lighting engineer. So that was money in the bank, so to speak, that he was giving the school, because he was giving them something that they would have had to pay otherwise a lot of money for. He's been very generous according to teachers from the school. He was very generous with his time, with his presence, and he's utterly reliable and trustworthy, they said. And yes, he gave both his children from his first marriage something. The architect diaries says, "Dear elegant Lady C, thank you for the interesting and informative videos. My pleasure. I love your sense of humor and intelligent eloquence. I wonder if you are related to the renowned feminist poet and essayist May Ziadeh. Lots of love from Italy." Yes, I am related to her. All Ziadehs are related, or Ziadeh as it's sometimes called in the West, or in Jamaica they say Zaidi, and sometimes in England they say Zaidi as well. But the correct classical pronunciation of the name is Ziadeh, which I very seldom say, I've got to tell you, because it's too awkward for Anglo-Saxon speakers to get their tongue around. So we normally say either Zaidi or Ziadeh, depending. That's what happens when you have an awkward name. I mean, you know, I'm from a world where many people have awkward names, and you know, for instance, even the Russians as well, you know, say Grand Duchess Ksenia. In the West, they say Grand Duchess Xenia. They don't say Ksenia. So you really work your way around the fact that some tongues have such a different sound and aspect to them that you just go with the flow, so to speak, and we have always gone with it. May Ziadeh was the foremost female writer for the first half of the 20th century in Arabic and French in the Middle East. She is the Jane Austen of the Middle East. She spent most of her life in Egypt. Her father was a newspaper publisher and had a newspaper in Cairo, and they lived in Cairo. She had the greatest salon in that part of the world for many, many years. So she was also a saloniste. She never got married. She was brilliant. The Ziadeh family is a very ancient family, primarily, or I should say basically, as opposed to primarily, Lebanese. They are traceably Christian to, I think it's the 8th century, might be the 7th, I forget. I'm sorry, I'm not upon my family history. Too busy with everybody else's. But I think it's the 7th, but it might be the 8th. So anyway, it doesn't really matter. The point is a long time. And they have played a very important part in the history of not only the Middle East, but they were allies of the Russian Empire. I'll get to that in a second. There are two branches, main branches of the family that, of course, have scattered all over the world. At the moment, Susan Ziadeh is the American ambassador to Qatar, I think. And so they're all over the world. They were one of the leading mercantile families in Jamaica. One of our cousins was the leading racehorse trainer in Venezuela. Spent his whole life living at the Tamanaka Hotel, which is, to me, is crazy. I mean, you know, can you imagine having a suite at the most expensive hotel in Caracas for the whole of your life? Such a shocking waste of money. But anyway, he was gorgeous and a wonderful person. So I'm getting away from the subject. There are two branches of the family. The family is originally from Castle Goring, which is by Julie, where St. George slew the dragon. For those of you who know the legend of St. George and the dragon, well, he slew the dragon where the Ziadeh family is from. And in the 18th century, two brothers left Castle Goring and went to Schweifert, which was in those days quite a distance away. There are all sorts of romantic stories as to why they did it. There might have been a blood feud, blah, 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 blah. I don't think so. That branch of the Ziadeh family was and remained Maronite. Under the Ottoman Empire, the Maronites were the keepers of the flame of the Lebanese heritage. They were therefore pretty much ostracized by the Ottomans. On the other hand, the Orthodox Christians were not ostracized. And I think it's very convenient that our branch of the family went to Schweifert, immediately became Orthodox, and managed to wangle their way in through, I should say that both branches of the family remained very much intellectuals and in terms of the church. So it was really intellect and the church. And our branch of the family ended up being the Tsar's representatives in the Middle East, because in those days, the aim of the Russian Empire was to have a seaport on the Mediterranean, and they were angling for Beirut, which in those days was a tiny sleeping fishing village. May's branch of the family, at the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, they flourished greatly. Our branch of the family left before, at the turn of the century, because the Ottomans were putting the screws in on the Christians in a major way, because they regarded us as fifth columnists, which in fact we were. I mean, let's be fair about it. We were fifth columnists. We were aiming to help to dismantle the Ottoman Empire and to become independent. And the loss of the Crimean War, Russia lost it, meant that Russia ceased to be the protectors of the Orthodox segment of the population in the Ottoman Empire the way it had been. So our families like ours really went from being very acceptable to being very unacceptable. And after waiting for about 45 years, 43 years, and 40-something years, my grandfather, his brothers, and his various cousins, etc., one by one decamped, leaving all the members of the family there, it has to be said. May's branch of the family, because after the downfall of the Ottoman Empire, Lebanon became a French protectorate, and being a Maronite, the Maronites incidentally are a branch of the Catholic religion. They have the Pope as and they are a Catholic branch but their mass is said in Aramaic. It's not said in English. It's in or in French or in Latin or in anything else. It's always been said in Aramaic. And so our branch of the family decamped, but the Maronite branch, which was the senior branch, our branch was the junior branch, and May was a member of the senior branch of the Ziadeh family. And she had two very well-known relations, actually three. There was Archbishop Ignatius Ziadeh, you know, like Ignatius Loyola. I mean, that should give you a clue as to how Catholic the family was. He became the Archbishop of Beirut. He was Archbishop of Beirut for a very long time, something like 40-something years. And he made some significant mistakes because he allied with the Phalangists and with Israel against the Muslims, which was a grave mistake, because the Muslims are also Lebanese. So he was a close relation of May's. She had two other close relations, Joseph and his brother, whose name escapes me at the moment. I'm trying to remember. Joseph and Louis. I don't know why it escaped me, because he's very important. Louis Ziadeh was the head of the bar in Aleppo for a time, etc. He was a very eminent jurist. And he took part in the Eddy coup in 1961, when there was the fear that the Muslims were going to try to amalgamate with Syria and the other surrounding Muslim states and sacrifice Lebanon's independence. And it was called the Eddy coup, E-D-D-E, if you want to look it up. And Louis Ziadeh was one of the conspirators. And I went to Lebanon as a guest of the Lebanese nation in 1995, and I met a very eminent Muslim politician who said to me the only reason why he was speaking to me was that I wasn't born in Lebanon, because my family was a total disgrace. Oh dear, I thought. He said, your cousin Louis was a total disgrace. Well, in fact, I actually thought that Louis was pretty cool, because really it wasn't about religion, it was about sovereignty. But he didn't see it like that. Charming man, despite being so to the point. But anyway, the coup failed and Lebanon remained independent. It's still independent. Its independence has been threatened. But to go back to May herself, she spent much of her time in Cairo. Her father lived in Cairo. Her mother, who was Palestinian, lived in Cairo. And she lost her parents. She lost various relations. And she had a great friendship with Khalil Gibran, who was a very famous poet and philosopher. They never met, but they had what was called a romantic correspondence. They were great friends, and they corresponded, and he died. She also was in love with somebody, and he died. And she never got married, because she was in love with somebody who she couldn't marry, because he was already married. But it says something about the sophistication of their world, that she was allowed to be an independent thinker and an important writer at a time when women usually got married. And she didn't get married, and the family was perfectly happy about that. Then she ended up having a nervous breakdown, and her cousins Louis and Joseph, who owned the Ziadeh Palace. There's a palace in Beirut called the Ziadeh Palace that is now ruined. It was ruined in the Civil War. And they owned the Ziadeh Palace, and they invited her to go back to Lebanon, and they would take care of her. And I have to tell you, the Ziadeh family has a long track record of, if they don't like what you're about, they try to lock you up. My father threatened it with me, and he and his brother did it with his sister on more than one occasion. So I know what I'm talking about. Something of a tradition in the family, I have to tell you, and laughing because you have to laugh because it's really not funny. They induced her to go back to Beirut and live with them, and they take care of her. They certainly did. They had her committed to the loony bin. But she was suffering from depression, but she certainly wasn't insane. She managed to get out of the lunatic asylum, and she never spoke to them again. She went back to Egypt, but it shattered her, as it would do, because, I mean, you accept refuge from your family, and they turn around and get you committed. Why did they get her committed? According to family legend, partly because they found her an embarrassment because she was too progressive and she was too independent. She was a feminist. But also, more than that, they wanted to get a hold of her money. So that's May Ziadeh. She died quite young. I think she was less than 60 when she died. She is one of the most revered writers in the Middle East. She was evidently a wonderful woman. My father's first cousin, May, was named after her. And her son was Sir Peter Jonas, who was the head of the English National Opera, Chicago Symphony Orchestra. He was the manager of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. Then he was the managing director of the English National Opera, and then of the Bavarian State Opera. Peter died a few months ago. And his mother, Aunt May, was also named after her. And we're very proud of the connection. But writing runs in the family. I'm a writer. My first cousin, Tony Winkler, he was a writer. He wrote books. One book that he wrote, something of fish, I can't remember the name of it now, was made into a movie with Lynn Redgrave. He wrote another movie about, I can't remember the name of it. The Lunatic. Sorry, The Lunatic. That was also made into a movie. And his Grammar Primer is one of the largest selling books of all time. But he also wrote other things. And I have other cousins who write for pleasure, and they publish their work, and it's just kept within the family. We come from a family that has always either been very worldly and very carnal, shall we say, or then very intellectual, sometimes both. My father was a great swordsman, and he was also extremely intelligent. He was the best read person I have met in the whole of my life. May, she had a sad life, but she had an interesting life, and it was only sad for a short period. But I don't think she ever got over the treachery of her relations. Having said that, touching upon the carnality, there's a large streak of carnality in the Ziadeh family. And that is the reason why Ignatius Ziadeh never became the Maronite patriarch. Somebody said to me in Lebanon, because normally the Archbishop of Beirut was made the Maronite patriarch, but old Uncle Ignatius couldn't keep his zip up, which was not the best recommendation for being the Maronite patriarch. So, oh dear. Yes, well, people have always said the family is very colourful, and I suppose it is. It is, but by and large, they're very warm and nice people, but they definitely sometimes, because, I mean, I knew that I was skating on very thin ice because my father made it absolutely clear when I was 13 years old that if I didn't play ball with him, I was going to end up in the loony bin. So, and May ended up in the loony bin. Fortunately, she got out of it. And hopefully this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and please keep the questions coming in. Thank you very much, and goodbye. God bless.